From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. It was committee day here in the legislature, and for the first time in weeks, the House and Senate did not also convene on this Wednesday, and we are grateful for that. But there was plenty of legislation moving, getting marked up, and in some cases getting held up. We'll start in the Senate Health Committee, where the issue of telehealth was discussed. State Senator Dan Roberts is sponsoring Senate Bill 210, which would provide for the growth of teledentistry in the state. The plan would define the practice, allow for its regulation by the Board of Dental Examiners, require an in-person dental visit before starting teledentistry, and also require an annual follow-up. The bill was opposed by Smile Direct Club, but Senator Roberts used a survey by the American Association of Orthodontics to support his position.
77% of orthodontists who responded had seen patients come into their office for retreatment due to the harm caused by mail order orthodontics. And mail order orthodontics typically mails a kit to a patient, whereupon the patient takes an impression of their teeth, sends it back to the company providing the service, and the company then sends the patient dental aligners. The problem comes that there are no initial x-rays to start with or follow-up as teeth are being moved.
Smile Direct Club strongly supports the bill sponsor's commitment to patient safety. There are provisions within the bills that we do support. However, there are also sections within the bill that is simply anti-competitive, and that's what we're here today to oppose. Unfortunately, this bill discriminates against the use of innovation, affordability, and access to care by creating unnecessary barriers to those who seek teledentistry services for clear aligner therapy, such as those provided by businesses such as ours.
The bill was amended to say that dental insurers are not mandated to cover the costs associated with teledentistry. The committee did not advance the legislation. Over in the Senate Judiciary Committee, it was another active day. Lawmakers dealt with an issue stemming from the new prohibited person database set up last year to help police determine if dangerous people have guns. Senate Bill 158 from Senator Chris Elliott would require the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency to add to that database anyone who has been involuntarily committed by a judge's order. Bay Minette Police Chief Al Tolbert said having this information in the database will go a long way towards enhancing safety for officers and the public.
You don't know if you're being cordial and everything's going great, the least little thing you say can trigger a violent reaction. And in our case, on August the 20th, that's exactly what happened. It went from 0 to 100, and when we don't know what triggered that violence from the individual. But again, if we had that flag, it could be tremendous for officers and the citizens. And let me just say this, in talking with this family, I know this family personally, their son that was killed, and the mother said it best to me when we was talking to them. Mental illness is like cancer. I don't know of anybody who wants cancer, and nobody wants to suffer from mental illness. But anything that we can do to help law enforcement out there recognize people with mental illness is huge, because we're dealing with mental patients every day. Even in our small town of Bay Minette, we deal with individuals who suffer from mental illness numerous times in one day.
That bill did advance and now goes to the full Senate. The committee took up additional legislation related to firearms. Under current law, it is illegal to discharge a firearm in a school building or school bus, but there is no law against discharging the firearm on school grounds. House Bill 34 from State Representative Tracy Estes would change that definition to include school grounds.
And for school grounds, you're also talking about there could be playgrounds out there, and so that's what we're trying to do is close that. We also have amendments that we carried on the floor that made this apply to adults 19 years of age and older. And I'm trying to think real quick about the other one. Oh yeah, also it will not apply to property owned, as many of you know, as 16th section land, because a lot of school boards lease that out for hunting. That's not, we're talking about grounds where there's instruction taking place in school buildings. So
that bill also advanced and now goes to the full Senate. And finally, the committee also took up and passed the retail theft bill sponsored by Senator Clyde Chambliss. Senate Bill 206 would elevate charges for retail theft to a Class B felony when at least 2 people are involved, regardless of the value of the item stolen. It would also create a new crime of organized retail theft, which is defined as stealing with the intent to harm the retailer or stealing with the intent to sell the stolen items. Some members of the committee expressed concerns about the bill, but ultimately it was advanced to the full Senate. The House version of that same bill was on the agenda in the House Judiciary Committee. Bill sponsor Representative Alan Treadaway made his case before the committee.
Go after folks who are involved in organized retail crime, which is a $100 billion criminal enterprise. It is a multinational system facilitated by organized crime, syndicates, and cartels, with profits used to facilitate other crimes such as human trafficking, drug trafficking, and terrorism. Many businesses face large revenue losses, limiting employee pay, passing losses of the theft onto the consumer, or just closing down their business. This is an Alabama problem that costs Alabama jobs. This bill would establish the crime of retail theft.
Some members said they were concerned about going too far with the retail theft issue. State Representative Matt Simpson said he wanted to study the bill more and moved to have it sent to a subcommittee. That will stall the bill in the House temporarily. Also in the House Judiciary Committee, the two sides of the vaping issue sparred during a public hearing about a bill regulating vapes. House Bill 319 from State Representative Barbara Drummond will provide stricter enforcement mechanisms and harsher penalties for a previous law that banned the sale of vapes to minors. It assesses new fees on those who sell vapes and changes the definition to include non-tobacco products. Drummond argued that her bill would protect children, but those from the vaping industry said it would hurt their ability to operate and help adults quit smoking.
This bill will simply now create a mechanism by which ABC and ALEA can now go out and enforce the laws that we have put on the books, especially the registry. What is happening in the state of Alabama is that there are a lot of bad actors out there. We see a lot of stuff on the vape shelves when we go into convenience stores and other stores that should not be sold because they're not even on the registry. But we're not enforcing that law right now. It's time that we stand up for our children.
I'm here today to urge you to oppose HB 319 because as written, it would do nothing to fix the problems caused by 2021's HB 273, which has fueled a gray market in this state, threatens to shut down Alabama's vape specialty stores, none of whom have been consulted nor are going to be on the board created by this legislation. And it would also, for some reason, give unexplainable deference to the actions of Joe Biden's Food and Drug Administration. It was never President Trump that proposed the PMTA registry, let's be clear. There are 674,000 adult smokers still in the state of Alabama, and Public Health England, the Royal College of Physicians, say these products are at least 95% less hazardous than smoking. We need to strictly enforce Tobacco 21, send more agents into vape stores, convenience stores, etc. But this proposal, in combination with what you are amending, the 2019 proposal, is a disaster.
There was no vote taken on that bill. The committee can possibly take it up next week. An update from Washington involving one of Alabama's delegation members. U.S. Senator Katie Britt has partnered with fellow Senators Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Brian Schatz of Hawaii, and Chris Murphy of Connecticut on bipartisan legislation designed to help to protect children from the harmful effects of social media. The Protecting Kids on Social Media Act would set a minimum age of 13 to use social media apps and would require parental consent for kids 13 through 17. The bill would also prevent social media companies from using algorithms to feed content to users under the age of 18. Britt spoke from the U.S. Capitol.
As someone who was a high school young woman at one point in her life, I can tell you how challenging that time is for anyone. But that was 25 years ago. If you add in the complications and the additional stressors and pressure of social media, it becomes too much for some to bear. This bill steps up and does what we need it to. It allows parents to be back a part of the conversation. And it also makes sure that big tech cannot prey on the emotions of our children. I am proud to be a part of this as we see this problem continues to grow. The time to act is now. We must protect our children so that we can protect their future and ultimately make sure that they have the opportunity to live the American dream.
We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the online video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Joining me next is State Representative Curtis Travis of Tuscaloosa. Mr. Travis, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me here, Todd. Look forward.
You're one of the freshman class, this really big freshman class,
Right.
and so I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and allow our audience to get to know you more. And so first, let me ask you, how's it going so far with your first couple of months now in the Alabama legislature?
Well, it's going well. You know, it's a learning process. You know, as somebody was just telling me earlier, we got a meeting in the cloakroom, and where's the cloakroom at and everything, you know, and sometimes it takes a reminder. But we've been doing well. You know, the committees I'm on, you know, I think have been ones that really my interest, the Port Authority, the new Port Waterway Authority, Transportation, Intermodal, Agriculture, Forestry. So the committees I'm on is not really what you call, you have controversy, more technical type issues and everything, which is right down my line. And then dealing with the House bills and stuff like that, you know, we're just trying to get used to how to flow the debate and stuff like that, and trying to figure out where it happens and you know, where you play. And sometimes it's just sitting at your desk trying to, you know, figure out what's next and everything.
Yep, it's a process, that's for sure. Well, give me some insight into why you decided to run for office. You actually defeated an incumbent, and that's not, you know, it doesn't happen every day. So why did you just first decide to run for office?
Well, you know, what happened, it was that I got people started calling me and asking me about running. And, you know, I wasn't familiar that redistricting had changed slightly and everything, which incorporated where I lived in southern Tuscaloosa into House District 72. And after people had asked me, I did some inquiring and checking, and a lot of people that were crying I had worked with in the past 22 years with my work with the Alabama Education Association as a field rep, so they knew me and felt I could be beneficial in doing some things of being accessible and getting some things worked out for the community. So that's how, you know, and after much prayer, you know, and talking to others, you know, I decided it was, and then the other thing was that I lost my wife 18 years ago to breast cancer, and so I raised my two children who at that time were 3 and 6 as a single father, and so now they're 21 and 24, and I didn't have anything to kind of, you know, just said, no, you tied down, you can't do
empty
this.
Nest.
Right, exactly,
Okay.
an empty nest type.
Well, and your district is rural, largely rural. I mean, you're in Tuscaloosa, but it's Hale, Green, and Bibb, right?
In rural Tuscaloosa County.
In rural Tuscaloosa County. And I remember reading your profile, and you saying that was a big reason why you're a proponent of expanding Medicaid, was its support for rural communities and hospitals especially.
Right. Well, when you start talking about rural counties like Hale County, Greene County, and Bibb County, your healthcare facilities is very important, because if you're going to have any type of industry or any type of jobs located or even able to recruit, you know, you got to at least have some type of healthcare availability. You got to at least be able to provide some emergency medical service. And if your system closes down, you don't have that available. And guess what? That's one of the first things a company is located. So, you know, there's no health care, no emergency, you know, not that they want, but, you know, they at least if an employee get injured, they want to feel like they got a way of EMS service and medical to at least sustain and take care of the person. So not having that, you know, in the threat that we're having because of the costs, you know, increasing costs and stuff like that, and then we're lacking health medical providers. And I think all that expanding Medicaid would have solved those problems in those rural communities.
It's obviously a Republican legislature and Republican governor, and so over the years they've been resistant to it, talking about the cost. But you're starting to hear some talk about maybe some novel ways that could go about maybe not calling it expanding Medicaid, something else. Are you hearing that in the building in terms, are you more hopeful than maybe they have been in the past?
Well, it is definitely more talk taken about it. I think some of the business community, the way they have come out supporting that we need to do it. I think Dr. Brunner has been a big proponent of it, people listening. And then, and then people just seeing where it makes sense. The money is, when you're talking about $1.4 billion that comes to the state every year that would be coming and everything, then when you think about what you could do with that in your communities and make a difference, and then particularly with our hospital, because the thing is when healthcare is not available rural, then it comes to the urban areas or towns. Well, it puts stress on that healthcare delivery system. So if we can make things happen so that stress is not there and the cost burden, then we win-win for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about education because of your background there. Upstairs in the Senate committee, they're debating or having a public hearing about this Price Act. It's basically school vouchers, education savings accounts, allowing parents to take their tax money, I guess, some of it, and go into a private school or somewhere else. There's some who really support that and say it's essential. There are some that don't. Where are you on that kind of the concept?
Well, I'm against it, and when you think about it, even the amount that they're talking, on that is probably more than most of the local rural systems I have that they spend. Because first of all, you deal with a millage. Our tax millage rate is dollar amounts a lot lower in these rural areas than that. But then the other thing is, if you take, for instance, Greene County, I got one elementary school, I got one middle school, I got one high school. There's nowhere else for students to say, go from one school system to another. There used to be Warrior Academy, it's closed, so there's no private school sitting there. So, what options do those students have? Now, do you say that the parents could homeschool? Well, maybe one or two, but when you're given the standpoint of most folks got to work or something like that they don't have the ability to stay there and try to do the homeschooling So, for it, it's not a help. And my thoughts are, if you would take and put those extra resources back into the local school systems and figure out ways to deal with that, you could see the difference in the education. But, these are the type of things that we've tried in the past, the private schools. So my feeling is there's no use trying to reinvent the wheel. We've tried it and see it didn't work. Let's, keep the dollars in public education and let's do the things, pay teachers more and do the type of things that we can make sure that we get the quality education that we need. Because one of the big things that we have in these rural areas is even attracting the type of teachers that you need to come to those communities. So we got to do something, that I think that the Price Act does not help any of those areas or solve any of those problems.
Well, and we're out of time, but I want to have you back on to talk more deeply about that. Also on gambling, we'll hit that next time. But I do hear about attracting rural teachers. They're paying them more to go there, and also math coaches, literacy, things like that. So we'll have to talk about that next time.
Okay.
But Mr. Travis, again, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to again.
We'll be right back. Joining me next is State Representative James Lomax of Huntsville. Mr. Lomax, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're a freshman lawmaker, your first term here in the State House. I was curious, it's been a few months now into the session. What's been your first impressions? How's it going so far?
Well, I'm having a ton of fun, first and foremost. I mean, it is kind of a rough and tumble world. I mean, state legislatures, all across the country, it's really the minor league of politics in a lot of ways, but that's where all the good players start to come out. That's where all the highlight reels come out of. And you see some really interesting stuff coming out of state legislatures. And I think that Alabama is no different in that. So really just getting to know all the other people, getting to hear their backgrounds and hear where they're from and what their concerns are has been just really interesting for me, especially being from Huntsville.
Yeah. Well, what made you run in the first place? Why did you make the decision, I want to be in the state legislature?
Yeah, so Howard Sanderford, who's my predecessor, was a good friend of mine. We're a Rotary Club together, but I'd kind of been bit with the political bug early. So when I was 18, I actually ran for city council in the city of Huntsville. Didn't know what I was doing. I lost that race. I was the youngest candidate to ever run in the city of Huntsville, and then a few months later, I was the youngest loser. So I kind of had that mock year running over me, but I'd stuck around politics. I worked on campaigns. I'd stayed interested. And then when he decided that he wasn't going to run again, he brought it up to me. I ran it by my wife. I ran it by my employer, and they were both okay with it, and we landed here.
And so what is your employment background?
So I work for a real estate investment trust. We're based out of Columbia, Maryland, but we have offices in Huntsville. I help develop their office portfolio there in Huntsville, so commercial real estate.
Well, I mean, Huntsville is just an exploding area. There's so much going on. I feel like sometimes we miss it down here because we're 3 hours away and it's hard to get up there all the time. But talk about that dynamic, coming down to Montgomery, trying to represent an area and make sure it is seen in a place where maybe sometimes that isn't the case.
Right. So I think it's a lot of education. It's building those relationships with my fellow members and just talking about the great things that are happening in Huntsville. I mean, Huntsville is a booming place, like you said. I believe we have 43 people a day that are moving to Huntsville. It's just staggering statistics. It's a very high-tech place. It is a federal town. I think it gets that label quite a bit, and there's a lot of truth to it. But they worked very hard to diversify it as well. So that's kind of the messages I want to talk about is, hey, look, now we have the Polarises, the Toyota Mazdas, the Target distribution centers. I mean, we're really working to diversify the economy and create a city that the whole state can be proud of.
And I know you have some legislation dealing with drones. That's sort of in the defense territory. Right. Tell me about what this bill does.
Yeah, so my district abuts Redstone Arsenal. I don't have any of it in my district, but the city wouldn't be what it is today without Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal is responsible for 10% of the GDP of the entire state of Alabama. Wow. So I mean, there's a lot of federal dollars that flow through there, from anywhere from the FBI to NASA. It's not just the Army. It's not just an Army base. But the bill that I have right now is a drone bill that would prohibit state government, local government, county governments from purchasing drones that are manufactured by companies that are on the designated list by the Office of Foreign Asset Control. So basically a sanction list. And really what that does is, in many cases, China has been putting chips into their drones that they produce, even just for private citizens, and sending them to the United States. So you may think you're surveying your farmland, but really they're surveying it as well. So it's really a national security and a state security issue.
Have other states done similar things?
Yeah, Tennessee had a very similar bill. They tied it to the National Defense Authorization Act. My bill is actually a little bit simpler in that it's a search tool provided by the Office of Foreign Asset Controls, just to make it easier for that county commissioner that's wondering if he can buy a drone or not.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, it wasn't too long ago we had this Chinese spy balloon coming over. I mean, I think everybody has a heightened concern about this. And yeah, if I was in the market for a drone for my farm or for even if it was recreational, I may not have any idea that it's even produced in China or something like that. I guess that's sort of the point.
Right, and what we found is a lot of municipalities don't know that either. They may be buying it for their tax assessor to survey land or for them to take pictures of their tourism events, and they just need to know that.
Well, speaking of Huntsville, it was kind of a big winner in the budget that passed the House yesterday. Huntsville Hospital was, got some really important workforce development funds. There were some other line items. Is that a win for you? Are the delegation excited about that?
I definitely saw it as a win, and I think what it reflects is that we do have leadership here in the House that understands Huntsville. Speaker Ledbetter is from North Alabama. You have Majority Leader is from North Alabama. They're both really understanding of the needs of Huntsville, but then also the General Fund Chairman, Rex Reynolds.
That doesn't hurt.
Great colleague of mine. I was very excited, and then seeing the National Guard got an armory that they're working to build right now. It's going to be in Huntsville. Their previous armory was basically in disrepair. It's getting turned into a senior citizen center. So really big win for Huntsville. We had even some little stuff like $25,000 for the Huntsville Sports Commission for a tourism event they're doing that's going to bring a conference tournament there for the CUSA. So I mean, we're turning into a sports city actually. We've had SEC track tournaments there. We've had SEC beach volleyball tournaments there. So I'm really excited about the tourism aspect as well.
Mm-hmm. Everything's going to Huntsville. A couple of years ago, on April Fool's Day for the Daily News, I joked that Shelby was moving the nation's capital to Huntsville, and a few people fell for it.
I'd be fine with that.
It was really funny.
We are getting a new courthouse, so
there you
federal
go.
courthouse.
That's right. That's got Shelby written all over
it.
Yeah. While I've got you, only got a little bit of time left. I know you also have bills working with the Secretary of State's office, dealing with elections. What do these do?
Right. So the Secretary of State's office, really, we just have a small bill that's going to reduce the amount of files they have to keep. So they have to keep all kinds of code books, files, basically physical files in a library. Right now they have to have 10 copies of each of those. We're reducing that to 5. Really make sure that they maintain the copies, but that it doesn't have to be so cumbersome. So really it's just saving the state space, physical space, which I know is, I'm in the real estate business. I can tell you space comes at a premium.
Sure.
So I was very excited to see that, and then working with the probate judges to try to see if we can get poll workers an increase in their pay. That I haven't filed that bill yet, but we're working to get that filed. I think that's incredibly important. A lot of these people are retired.
Yeah.
They need to be able to at least go pay for a steak dinner at the end of their long work day. So that's one of the keys there.
Well, we'll be looking for that legislation and other issues, and really appreciate you coming on the show. Look forward to seeing your career here in the State House.
Yeah, thanks, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at 10:30 with more coverage of the Alabama legislature right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.